Okay, so we want to talk about doing a one variable statistic on a set of data. So during a 10 game season, a high school football team scored the following number of points. So on the graphing calculator, we start home screen, new document, say no to drugs, and add a list in spreadsheet page. So the first thing we always do is name this column. This column needs to have a name because we're going to use that name later. So this is about points scored. So I'm just going to name this column points. Now I put in our 10 scores: 14, 17, 21, 10, 35, 27, 13, 7, 45, and 21. Now, when I check my data, notice that in row number 10 is the input 21. That means that I had 10 data points in this set. And originally, I told you this was a 10 game season. So I want to make sure that my data that I put in my calculator is correct. Now I'm going to go to cell C, row number 1. This is where we do the one variable statistic. So menu, statistics, then we go stat calculation. And I need a one variable statistic. So remember, menu, statistic, stat calculation. And that's how I get a one variable statistic. Now, the number of lists will always be 1 no matter what. If it's a one variable statistic, you can only have one list here. So say OK. Now, to find out what list I'm using, I press this right arrow and I choose points because that's what I name my column. And now I have a one variable statistic. So the next step is to take a picture of these 5 results right here for the one variable statistic. Next, we take another snapshot of lines 6 and 7 for the second piece of data. Finally, we go down to the bottom, and we get our 5-number summary. The key for the 5-number summary, at the top is the min, at the bottom is the max, and those 5 numbers represent the 5 numbers. Once we have all our data in our one variable statistics, we need a graph of the data points. So here we add a new page. So control the document key right under the house key to put a new page. So I started with control, then the document key. I have all the lists, the data is in the list and spreadsheet. So I go to a data stats page to organize it. Now, I go down below and click to add variable. There's only one variable, so this is the only place I'm going to click, and I'm going to put points. And that takes all my data, organizes it in a nice dot plot, and then I just take a picture. And that is how you do a one variable statistic in the TI Nspire graphing calculator. Post that picture in my document. And there is the answer to question number 4. Now let's take a minute and go down to question number 9 and try this one more time. Now, the detail we need to remember with question 9 is we're starting with two columns of data, scores and frequencies. So we have to have a score column and a frequency column. Always just use FREQ though. Don't try to write the whole word out. So 48, 50, 53, 54, 57, 62, and finally 68. That's our scores column. Now we go over and say, how many times do those scores occur? That's what the frequency tells us. 48 only happened once. 50 actually happened 3 times. 53 only happened once. 54 twice. And then the last one's once each time. So there were 7 inputs, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I have 7 inputs here. Go to cell C1 and run a 1 variable statistic. Menu, statistics, stat calculation, and of course 1 variable statistic. This is the detail. Even though there are 2 columns, one of them's just a frequency. It tells me how many times these scores happen. So I don't say 2 lists. There's only 1 list. It's scores, and it's about how many there were. So there, my X list is scores. See how it's got frequency here. Don't pick frequency, pick score. Now the frequency list is why we made it. That's telling me how many times those scores actually happened. And that's the biggest difference with number 9. So now I can go through and steal all my data that I just accumulated. So now that I have my 1 variable statistic, all my data is here, I need to go through and create the graph. So Control followed by the document key, and I add a data stats page. And again, what I care about is my X variable, which is scores. So now that gives me a graph of my scores, and I can take that and put it into my document. So the only issue with this graph is, let me make this a bit larger. Notice that right here, n is supposed to be 10 because they're talking about 10 scores. And right now, my graph only has 7. And the reason is because there's supposed to be 3 50s, and it only has 1. So I have to add 2. Now there's 3 50s. When I go up, there's actually 2 54s instead of 1, so I add 1. Now there's 10 data points to match the 10 inputs. That's all the frequency did, was add those extra data points. And that's how you do a 1 variable statistic with a frequency table.